Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's DevOps Chat, where I am absolutely thrilled to have joining me Jim and Michele McCarthy. So thank you so much for joining, guys.
Oh, we're just tickled.
Sure.
So I very much think of you as legends of software development. But maybe for those who haven't heard of kind of the work you've done in the past, could you talk a little bit about maybe starting with the early stage of your career, the Microsoft days, and what you were working on then and what you discovered?
Well, I can tell you, I started out like I bought a computer at Radio Shack, serial number 400. I just had to have it, you know. And I can remember I asked the guy, well, what can it do? You know, the sales clerk at Radio Shack, and he goes, anything you want. And I was like, perfect. So I spent my last $400 credit on it. And that worked out okay, as things turned out, right? So I went in the room to learn how to program it because it wouldn't do anything without software, I found out later. And I had to learn to program, but I went in that room and well, you can see I'm still in it, but the room has gotten more comfortable because the computers are so productive of goodness and wealth. And the first room was right next to a furnace in the basement, you know, so. And then, so that was like late 80s. And then Michele and I met in the 90s. Why don't you take it from there, Mitch?
Okay, 90s.
Mid 90s or whatever. We were at Microsoft.
Mid 90s. So someone introduced us, and we immediately hit it off. Immediately, like in the first 5 minutes, we were on the same page.
Which was pretty unusual.
Because we had been working on the same thing independently, and we didn't know about each other at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. We've been both running team experiments, and we both saw the team as the key to getting great results in software, which is what we were both working on. And so we worked together on the Visual C++ team, and Jim had already been working with them. And once the two of us started working together, we started ramping up the amount of experiments we were running on the team, and we were getting great results. So
actually, that was the first. Michele was the first person job was to be a team coach.
I was called Counselor Troy. Right.
Yeah, the team.
Because Star Trek was a big hit back then, so everyone could relate to that idea.
And Counselor Troy was always the one, when the monster was on screen going, I will devour you. She would go, I sense anger, Captain.
So I'm trying to picture this. So you were at Microsoft, you were working on, pretty much I'd call it leading edge product, Visual C++.
It felt fresh, yeah.
But you were both fascinated not just by the software itself, but also how you get people working together in teams to build great software. Is that right?
Yeah, I would go even further. I would say we were just like, yeah, software. I mean, we can make software all day, but the people stuff, that's what really. We spent 99% of our time talking about the people stuff.
Yeah.
Because we knew if we took care of that, then the software that part would be easy if we took care of the people problems.
And
yeah.
And I think, so for me, that's interesting because we've had a lot of these DevOps chats over the last year, and we find so often things come back to people. So even when we start talking about Docker or containers or quite technical subjects, it's amazing how quickly the conversation usually actually comes back to people and how it helps them work together. And so going back to my memories from the mid 1990s, I remember vividly at uni reading your book, Dynamics of Software Development. And one of the interesting things for me about that book was it was not at all about the technical side of software development. It wasn't even, I wouldn't say, a book that described processes or rules, but it was all about teamwork. So perhaps you could give a bit of background to what led you to write that book.
Oh, well, I started giving a talk, and the name of the talk was Slipping Without Falling, how to ship great software on time. And it had some rules of thumb. And I was giving that talk before I came to Microsoft, but while I was at Microsoft, obviously, like, I was in the middle of this big high-tech group, sort of, I was like where I wanted to be my whole life, kind of. I was conducting the orchestra, and it was just really a great opportunity. And the only thing we could do, though, with that many people is everything had to be operated like metaphorically, almost, like I had to work with a lot of symbols, and I just really had to learn a lot about waking this team up, because they were in a turnaround mode, which is how I got my job, because I was, third or fourth in a row, 1 year term each, it wasn't working. And so they were in a turnaround mode. So something dramatic had to happen. And it took me about 6 months to realize I was going to get fired, just like the last 3 or 4 guys, because I too was paralyzed, like you have to just go and fix stuff, and find out why it's broken. And it's 100% people. Computers are really pretty, more or less stable platforms for running code, more or less anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But much more than any given group of people who's trying to program them. And so I just dove in and it was like, we got to win right now. And so we did. Once it became clear to everybody that we were going to do that. And they were just awesome. I can remember we had a meeting, like it was like, what are all our projects, and there was dozens of them, and it was like, which one do you think is going to win? And like, there was none. And so we just sort of went, well, don't you think we ought to have at least one that we think is going to win? And everyone's like, yeah. So which one? So we just picked one and killed everything. The team killed all the other projects.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was obvious we had to do something to win. So then we all piled onto this one project, and we asked every single human if they were in, to give us 5 ideas. And so, 100, 200 people, 5 ideas, a lot of ideas, and really, from my point of view, from those ideas come everything else, right? That's where Agile was born, where all this stuff came from. Came from those people's ideas and their creations and collaboration, their enthusiasm, their determination to ship on time, and to figure out why we weren't.
Wow. So you took very much that experience of trying to turn a delivery around, and then from that develop these rules of thumb, which then made it into the book.
Yeah, kind of like that. The rules of thumb thing was sort of my style anyway. It was just like, I don't really believe a lot in like a big, set of values. Our values are very simple. Results count, and
Mm-hmm.
and everything else kind of doesn't. So, and results are what you want, that you get what you want, right? And that counts. In all cases, what you want counts. And so it's a matter of asking the team what they wanted. Did you want to win? Because if you don't want to win, that's okay with me. I can't win without you. And I held up a CD and I went, on February 23rd of next year, I'm going to stand in front of several thousand people and announce our product that wins. And there's either going to be some code on there or I'm going to be lying. So it's going to be one of those things, though, because I'm not going to go down with bullets in my gun. So we're going to try to ship something on time.
And I think that's a good example of Jim's innate understanding that that leadership is about invitation. If you can see there, just from that example, how he invited the team and asked them what they wanted. He didn't tell them to do something. We find that wholly ineffective, even though that seems to be what most executives or people with power think that their job is to tell people what to do. That you notice from that story, he wasn't telling people what to do. he was going, what do you guys want?
Yeah.
What projects do we have? Are they going to win? Would you rather have one that win? You know, he let them come up with the answers.
Wow.
Right. Right. And like, you know, if control is what you're after, and like, what you're just in the wrong business. You know, if control is what you're after, go work on, I don't know what, pipes. I don't, something else, something that's
in a prison. Go work in a prison.
Yeah.
Really, I mean.
As well, exactly. Exactly.
Leadership is helpful anywhere, and you know, if you like the power of telling people what to do and they have to do what you say, then you know you're not going to be very effective, except in a couple of jobs.
And so would you? Because again, this is a topic that we've had come up before, is around autonomy and not having a very kind of top-down hierarchical approach to management. So would you say that was one of your early discoveries, or was it just something you already intuitively knew, that actually to get a team working effectively, you can't tell them precisely what they have to do?
Well, I couldn't. I mean, I'll tell you that much. I sure as hell knew that like, if any 3 or 4 of these people ever agreed on anything, I was like, yes, let's do that, you know.
We'll maybe come back to that a little bit later. In terms of dynamics of software development, it was written as you say, as this book, a collection of rules of thumb. I think there were 54 in the book. Is there one that still stands out for you, that's kind of the main one, or that stood the test of time, or a personal favorite?
I think the biggest insight we ever had, and it felt original, but I'm sure it's been thought before and just maybe not said before in our way. But the most important, the fundamental equation of the science of teamwork and the fundamental aesthetic of the art of teamwork is team equals product. Now, we called it team equals software originally, but it's a product, or whatever the team's output is, you know, it's going to come exactly from the team. So, for example, if the software is slow, you know, the team is loaded with bureaucracy and just can't make decisions, whatever. You can find every attribute of the product in the team and every attribute of the team in the product. It's a straight through self-expression. And if you analyze it, you can find your point of accountability. One of the big problems at that time was, when there was a problem, there was no solution. Because there was no means of measurement or assessing accountability. Software is very inherently democratic and really anarchic, basically. And so the response is always to try and control it. And like, that just makes it worse and dumber and dumber and dumber, right? Because you're trying to get intellects into the product, and yet the knee-jerk thing is to throw the intellects out, you know?
Right.
Shut up, everybody shut up and listen. You know? We need to get smarter. So we're only going to use my IQ, and then I'm going to give that to the next level down, and then they misinterpret it and give it to the next level down. And by the time it gets to the front line, it's like my dog wrote this code. You know, IQ of about 12. So yeah, team equals product. Because here's the thing, and Michele can really elaborate on this because she really has a good feeling for this, which is, as you go up the line, your product is not the code. Your product is the team below you.
Right. Okay. So yeah, Michele, maybe talk a bit more. So you've started there, Jim, by saying that if you're not happy with the software you're producing or the speed you're producing it, then the first place to look is the team, actually, because everything that the team is doing is reflected really in the software.
You look from yourself out.
Yeah.
So you start with your team. That's your immediate product, the 4 or 5 people you work with. So go ahead.
Sorry, Michele, yes, and then you take that.
Well, the idea of team equals product is really, for us, it's turning out to be such a miraculous insight, not just that first level of where you go look at a team and then look at a software, but really it applies to all of life. And so like an advanced level would be, the executives in a company, their product would be the team that works for them. Do those people work as a team? Are they fighting? That will show up in the products that the company makes. And then the teams that work for that set of people, it will show up in those teams. It will go all the way down. And so kind of in the 2000s, we ran into a lot of, oh my gosh, we're walking around in the dream world of the CEO, or we're walking around in the dream world of the CTO. And it'd be really clear that's what was going on. And then we'd have to like remove ourselves from that in order to help everybody else. So that's how powerful this rule is, and really how beautiful and elegant it is. So, and I'll just show you how elegant it is further. About, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, we decided, Jim and I, that our team was Jim and Michele. And so that was #1 priority, and everything had to be, we were going to make that as great as possible. And then that, if we were right, then everything else would fall into place. Work, family, health, everything else. And we just keep getting amazing results just from practicing that in our marriage. Year after year, we're just amazed at the results we get. So it's kind of like, I really love Neil deGrasse Tyson and how beautiful he thinks Einstein's ideas were and how magical he thinks they were. And that's kind of how I feel about team equals product, because it just applies to everything. You really, if you can think like that, then man, you're 1,000 times smarter right off the bat.
You can see things and do something about it. Whereas prior to that kind of insight, you can only see things and then suffer the angst associated with helplessness.
I was going to say, is that part of the power of it? That, of course, by saying, actually, if we want to see change in other people or in the things around us, then we have to start with ourselves. That immediately gives you the power as well to change something, because it's entirely within your...
The best thing we've come up with to help us from deteriorating and devolving into hypocrites is we just came up with something that we call the Hippocratic Oath.
Yep.
And that is, if I'm saying it, it's because I'm working on it in my life. Period. I don't preach what I ain't doing. And I'm making this a public proclamation. So if you see me not doing something I say you ought to think about doing, I need you to bust me. That's fine. You're invited to.
Yep.
I accept error handling, right? In the team, my greater team, right? They will see the errors and they can call me on the Hippocratic Oath, right? Wait a minute, are you doing this? You know, it's like, of course I'm not. You know.
So I feel we've got to fast forward a few years from your time at Microsoft. You moved on and you started running boot camps. Is that right?
Right away. Like, and we just stepped right into running boot camps.
And can you describe a little bit what those boot camps were, what they consisted of?
So what we did is they were 5-day retreats with teams, and the teams were typically groups of people from corporations, and typically some type of high-tech project, and usually software in the beginning. And we give them the assignment. We give the assignment to the team at the beginning: design, implement, and deliver a product, a course that teaches you everything you need to know to ship great products on time every time.
Right.
And so that's recursive if you think about it a little bit. And then what we did was we we would help with leadership a little bit, but mostly we'd just let the experiment run and observe. That's the most important thing we did. And we'd write down what worked really well and give it to the next team. And then at some point, Jim had the insight, which was really great, which was that we were writing down code. Only the code runs in our heads.
So this is where the idea of software
for your head
comes from.
So we started debugging the code. We were like, someone found a loophole there. We gotta plug that up. That one doesn't seem. Every time we run that, I'm like, the results are mediocre. Let's just throw that one out. We find it like a great new one, and we add that one in. And the code stabilized pretty quickly, probably first 5 or 6 years.
It seems quickly only in retrospect, my friend.
Yeah, that's true. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But
these teams are trying to do something great from a cold start in a week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
By great, we mean really great, not like metaphorically great.
So you were kind of, each time you ran a boot camp, it was a sort of experiment, and you were
totally an experiment.
And you were getting these people to work together as a team to produce a course to show people how to be great, and work well as a team. And then the lessons that you could observe and learn from each iteration of that experiment, you were seeding that into the next group that ran the experiment, and that's
how we iterated.
That took about a year to even have that idea, though.
Right.
That's how dumb we are.
But I think this is you're right, isn't it? 6 years doesn't seem so long when you look back at it, but 6 years at the time is that. But literally, that's thousands, that's tens of thousands of people's hours of people's time invested iteratively coming up with these ideas. And is that what has then become embedded in what you call the core protocols?
Right. So that code is the core protocols, and the story we wrote about it and the protocols themselves are in the book Software for Your Head.
Right.
And we've elaborated quite a bit in our podcasts.
Yep. So I suppose one thing I should make clear, the core protocols, they're open source, aren't they? They're made available publicly. So is that correct?
They are explicitly licensed by the GNU license, and the only thing is if you teach someone a protocol, you have to give them the source code to all the protocols.
Right. Yep. And what I of course, I've read the core protocols, and we'll talk a bit more about some of them in a moment. What I found amazing about them is really how short they are. There's not a lot of text. There's no fluff in there. It tells you exactly what you need to do without really much. There's not even much explanation of why this works. But that is where I think your podcasts. but this is where your podcasts, where I think you've pretty much got a podcast for each of the protocols.
I don't think
pretty close, yeah.
Pretty close enough.
Yeah, and then a lot of other podcasts that kind of provide more material around that. And I think if you combine the two, reading the protocols and listening to your podcasts, you start to get a pretty good feel for what it is that you've managed to come up with over this quite long period of time.
What we decided, having been on this amazing team at Microsoft, I mean, it went from unable to ship, losing 20, 30 points of market share, going 2 years between releases, to shipping anytime they wanted on a subscription, doubling their revenue, reducing their headcount. I mean, all the virtues, right? But it was more than that. It was an amazing experience of loving, intimate collaboration, like just triumphant, right? Mature, not beginner stuff, And if you were on a team like that and you didn't go work on figuring out how everybody else could be on a team like that, then you violate the Hippocratic Oath. Because that was all we could do. We had to do that. We had to quit our job and do that full-time experimentally until we could express it in 11 pages of behavior.
Which is amazing, isn't it? 11. So I encourage anyone to at the very least read the core protocols, because it takes hardly any time, and yet they are.
It's about as fun as reading a manual about sex. It's not the same as sex.
No, that's true. So I'm conscious of time, and we've talked quite a lot already. So maybe just to finish off, we could pick just one of the protocols and talk a little bit more about it. Do you have one that you that is kind of your personal favorite, or that you think is the most powerful?
Michelle?
My favorite right now is probably either listen or investigate. Those are my go-tos just in life and really everything I do. So
go on. Could you tell us a little bit? Investigate is one that I am, have been very, well, I've been able to use, and it's one that I think as well you can use it without other people having to know about it.
Yes. So investigate is really simple, and it's that you ask questions with the intent of learning about the other person.
Yep.
So that means you have to take out all the other intents. Like, you can't have the intent of teaching the person or getting the person on your side or having an agenda or asking a leading question or arguing with them or having them listen to you. You can only have the intent of being curious about the other person. And it takes some practice to where you can only have that intent.
And I might be getting mixed up here, but I seem to remember one of the pieces of advice was to not start a question with why.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why doesn't work, but why seems, that just seems to be a good rule of thumb. If they use how, or will you tell me more about X, or and the protocol, if you look at the protocol, it gives you a lot of help in how to start questions in a way that'll get you interesting answers.
Yeah. We have this idea of a well-formed question. It's a question that you want the information. If the question is answered, you get information that you didn't have to start with. That's a well-formed question.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those interesting things where I read that and I thought, crikey, for all these years I've been thinking why as one of the great questions to ask. But when I read that and then I started trying it out, I realized that actually why tends to feel confrontational. People feel it
promotes defensiveness.
Yeah, it's like you're saying, it's almost like you're saying, well, I don't believe it. And so,
yeah, one clue is that little kids like it so much.
Yeah, and parents not so much.
Right.
I think it's important. Another protocol that's just really important to know is Decider.
Yep.
Decider is the political system of the core protocols, which is to say, no action is taken without unanimous consent. Even when like the founders of the United States created the Constitution, they didn't run by majority rule. They shut the door and they said, nobody gets out of here without agreeing to everything. Then people start to agree, work out conflicts. So if unanimity is your political system, i.e. everybody has to say yes, or slightly modified yes called support it, sideways, up, support it, reject it.
Yeah.
So that's basically the basic mechanics of the protocol. Someone goes, I propose, and then everybody else has to shut up because someone says is proposing action, which is sacred.
Yep.
If we're going to act, we're going to now attain unanimity and then act. Wow. With one purpose and one voice. So like that's Decider. And like if you vote no, it means that you think you have a better idea immediately available than the current idea, than the proposed idea. So you don't just vote no because you feel like shutting everything down. You vote no because you think you have a better idea. Then the person turns to you and goes, what would it take to get you in? you voted no. Right? Well, to get in, it would have to be X. I propose X. Everybody votes yes, no, and so on.
Yep.
But it's actually easier to get unanimity than it is to get majority. It takes less time and results much, much better.
And I think, so I mean, that's one of the things that I, again, found so powerful about Decider was that, is that idea that if you reject, then you've got to have an idea that you think is better, that you're prepared to propose.
Right. You can't just stop the team.
If you
because you
don't have a better idea,
you feel like it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have a better idea, then the worst you can give it is a
better idea right now too,
yeah.
not late.
Not like we'll go away and work it out. And again, it's the bias for action, isn't it? It's the idea that actually doing something, anything, is more important than talking about it for a week.
Yeah, and that's not our opinion. I mean, it took us years to get to that place where we were just like, no, we're not, that doesn't work. Like, we would let people stop the show for years, you know? And finally we're like, no, we have to do something else, because they would really stop the show once they figured out they could. And so that was just from experimentation and trying something else. And we tried, like, you can't stop the show unless you have a better idea. Like the team let's see what happens when we require team momentum.
And
well, yeah, but you still can vote no and not have a better idea, and you do not get hung at noon. You know, but in general, you're out of order, and everybody hates it and doesn't like it, and it's not fair.
And if it's
and
only
when we say we won't let you, that's what we mean.
And it's
like, it better be a really, really horrible idea, and you save the day by voting no.
Which happens. Sometimes the only person that votes no is totally right. That everybody's
right.
exactly ready to jump off a freaking.
So we had to take into account, because we'd seen that happen. We had to take into account that small percentage, but we had to get rid of all the no's because I don't feel like it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I think let's. I'm conscious of the time, and I know that we wouldn't have time to properly cover all of the protocols, and you've done that so well already in what you've written and in the podcast and in the book. So let's wrap up there. I am really looking forward. I think it's going to be one of the most interesting kind of online chats that we have around this topic of teams and getting teams performing in a way that is great. But really want to thank you again for taking some time for this conversation, and yeah, very much looking forward to the Twitter chat.
We are too.
Yeah, we are too. And I just want to say this one thing is that we have this affinity for DevOps and stuff, like the people and the way they go about things and the feeling of the movement is way better than all the other movements.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love DevOps.
And feeling of like
when I'm on Twitter, I'm always tweeting to DevOps. And they always give me good feedback.
And so many of the kind of principles and the ideas I think are so similar to some of the, almost, you would think they were based on some of the things you've been talking about now for
totally
20 years.
Right. So I just wanted to kiss their ass before we got going.
Me too.
So on that note, thank you again, guys. Speak soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. So we thought we'd finished this conversation, but about 2 minutes after we stopped, Michelle and Jim realized there was something else that they
something we want to say.
so go on, Michelle. Go on, Michelle.
We're very passionate about this.
Yeah, like he kept going, there's no time, and seriously, there was no time. The meeting ended and it shot us.
Okay, here's the thing. I felt a lot of regret when we stopped, because I thought, oh man, I didn't say this really important thing that people should know, which is there's a reason to learn the core protocols and to be an expert at them. And the reason is because everything else you learn how to do, whether it's, DevOps philosophy or Agile or getting shared values or getting a mission statement for your team or your company, all those things, they don't tell you how to do it. And they don't go, step 1, you do this, step 2, you do this, step 3, you do this, step 4, etc. And the core protocols does. It tells you how to do any of those things. So any of those other things that gurus are telling you to do or organizations are telling you to do, if you want to know how to get them done in a effective way, in a lasting way, you need the core protocols or something better. And as soon as I see something better, I will put it in the core protocols. I promise.
Jim, do you want to say something on that too?
Well, yeah. I mean, we kind of like have devoted ourselves to this cause of figuring out how humans can behave more effectively, where effective equals getting more of what you want with less of what you have, with spending less of what you have, getting more of what you want. That's the key to salvation on earth, and that's why we're here. And so the way we've been doing that is as if it were a scientific problem. We're not, the things that are in the core are not our best ideas or anything close to that. They're actually what worked among a lot of teams working really hard for your benefit. Cash it in, dude. Don't be silly. Like, this stuff just works. You don't have to do it just like we say, because we say it. It's like, here's what thousands of people in the lab and in the field found works to organize their identity into one multi-personal genius creature.
Culture change. Just had a client. They wanted to change the culture. And we're like, okay, you just use the core protocols. That's how you do it. And they're like, no. And we're like, yeah, that's how you do it. Otherwise, it's not gonna happen.
And I would just, so I suppose just to add to that, I think, it's absolutely right. And we've seen it in DevOpsChat that there are lots of things that everyone will agree with. So better collaboration, more result focus,
right.
As you say, shared vision for what you're working on. There's very little disagreement about some of those things being important, but as you say, the gap often is not should we have that, but how do we get that?
Right. Once we all agree we should have it, how do we get it?
Yeah.
How do I get that independent of everyone else too? Like, how do I just start acting on that?
Yeah.
That's the other.
So that's the reason not to just go, oh, this is another way I spent my lunch hour or whatever. This is life-changing and career-changing. You can make your life great with this stuff. And you can make your career great.
I suppose I must emphasize again, it is highly condensed. So you've taken all of that learning and did you say 11 pages? It's
11 pages, 11 commitments, 11 protocols.
And it just describes exactly what you need to do to make it happen.
Right.
Fantastic. Right.
Yeah, so why it doesn't work by default is because it's missing prescription. It's missing cookie recipe. There's no recipe.
Mm-hmm.
This is a recipe.
Right.
And everybody goes, oh, don't tell me how to do stuff. It's like, oh, okay. Just because I know and you don't, I won't possibly tell you, because I know it's important that you fall off the bike 100 times first.
Or try and do all the work we did, start over. Like, don't be a scientist and use the work that came before you.
Right, we call it
start
science.
From there. Start brand like Google just did. Just start over.
Start over. Start
from scratch. And like, what makes a team great? Like, start from scratch on that one.
So okay, so I think this is the first ever kind of time it's happened on a DevOps chat that we've finished an interview and then had to tag something on the end. So
all right.
So maybe this is. Maybe this is the real end now, or maybe in a few minutes we'll
see what we should have said.
That's not enough.
Well, that's the thing with bootcamp. It never stops.
Great stuff. Okay. Thanks so much, guys. Speak soon.
Thanks.
See you. Thank you.
Cheers.